Viruses, that's what we're going to be talking about. And this is Miss Marine speaking to you. So, first of all, what is a virus? A virus is a non living pathogen, and a pathogen is a disease causing agent. And this type of pathogen survives by making copies of itself inside of living cells, and it can be plant cells, animal cells, bacterial cells, or even fungal cells. And it's important to remember that viruses cannot survive by themselves. They have to be inside of a living cell in order to reproduce and make more viruses. In terms of structure, there are two things to remember, two main components that a virus has. The first one is a nucleic acid, and this nucleic acid can be DNA, which is double-stranded, or RNA, which is single-stranded. And viruses also have a capsid, and a capsid is just a structure that surrounds the nucleic acid and protects it. If you think of a nucleus inside of a cell, how the nucleus protects DNA inside of humans, that's kind of what you can imagine a capsid as being, something that surrounds the genetic material and protects it. So there are four main structures that viruses have, and the first one is the polyhedral. That means it has many sides. The second one is helical. So that means the nucleic acid is structural, or a spiral shape. Third is an envelope studded, and an envelope studded virus is one that has a extra structure that surrounds the capsid and has little spikes on it. And third, you have a polyhedral head with a cylindrical tail and tail fibers. So going into more detail, a polyhedral virus has a capsid with many sides, and so you see that for this virus there's like a lot of little triangles making up the sides, and inside you see the nucleic acid. And many viruses have this type of structure. An example would be HPV, or human papillomavirus, which can be found in men or women. And this is one of those viruses or STDs that someone can have and they not know that they have it. It's asymptomatic most of the time. And sometimes with particular forms, because there's over 40 different types of HPV, someone might have warts, or even it can lead to cancer and different things like that. So going to that second structure of a virus, there's the helical type of virus, which is long and narrow. As you can see, the capsid is long and narrow, and the nucleic acid is in a spiral shape. And two examples of this type of virus is the tobacco mosaic virus, which affects tobacco plants, and it causes a discoloration in the leaves, or spotting on the leaves of the virus, and the Ebola virus, which affects humans and other primates. Very, very dangerous virus, the Ebola virus. Then there's the envelope studded virus, and it has a capsid that is surrounded by an additional envelope. I don't have a picture for you here, but it does. It has lots of spikes around it. And two examples of this is HIV and the flu virus, also known as influenza. That fourth and last structure, the polyhedral head with the tail and leg structure, it has the polyhedral structure, the head, which you can see here, and the genetic material inside. In this case, it's DNA. And the head is the capsid in this case. And then it also has a tail sheath, which is cylindrical, and structures that look like legs. And the legs are the portion that would attach to the host cell, and then the genetic material would be injected into the cell. This is one of the more complex types of viruses. And an example is a T4 virus, which is a type of bacteriophage. And a bacteriophage is a virus that attacks bacteria. Phage, and coming from the word, means virus, where bacterial is referring to bacteria. So a virus that attacks bacteria. There are two main phases that, or viral replication cycles that viruses experience. The first one is the lytic cycle, and that's what we'll be talking about right now. And then later on is the lysogenic cycle. So here in the lytic cycle, there's 5 main steps, and in this cycle, the virus will cause the host cell to produce more viruses, and it will ultimately lead to cell lysis, where the cell breaks open. And so the first stage, attachment, is where the virus attaches itself to the host cell. Entry, where the virus injects its genetic material into the host cell. Replication, and replication is in this case, referring to the virus components being replicated. So the nucleic acid of the virus, which can be DNA or RNA, is being copied and reproduced. And then assembly. And this is where all the components of the virus is being put together. So if you go back to that picture of the bacteriophage, if you think of the head and the legs and all of that, all of those components would be assembled in this assembly phase. And the last phase is lysis and release, where the cell is burst open and all of the viruses that have been made are released into the body. And here's the image of the lytic cycle. Again, you can see here where the virus, and this is an example of a bacteriophage or a phage type of virus attaching to the host cell. So it attaches to the host cell, and then it's injecting its DNA into the host cell, and then more copies, lots of copies of the virus is being made, and then the virus components are being assembled, and eventually the cell bursts open or lyse, and the viruses are released. And the cycle will continue. When viruses are released, they will attach to other host cells and continue the cycle. So the second viral replication cycle, as mentioned earlier, is the lysogenic cycle. And here, this is where the viral DNA, or RNA in some cases, so it's genetic material, binds to the host cell DNA. And there's 4 steps in this process: attachment, entry, and the stage where the virus combines to the host nucleic acid. And you can consider this phase replication as well if you want to simplify that. So stage 3 would be replication. And step 4, where the cell divides and the nucleic acid is copied. So I guess these both steps 2, 3, and 4 are replication. And then you have, and this cycle can also lead to the lytic cycle eventually, and you'll see that here in this image combining both the lytic and the lysogenic cycle. So if we go back to the lytic cycle, here you can see this whole process. And then over here is the lysogenic cycle, where the viral DNA is inside of the cell with the host cell DNA, and they join each other, and then the nucleic acid joined with the host nucleic acid is replicated, and you get another phage. And eventually, before going into the lytic cycle, the viral nucleic acid can separate from the host cell nucleic acid, and then you start that replication of the components in assembly and then cell lysis. So then this goes back to asymptomatic people, as we were talking about earlier when you learned about STDs such as gonorrhea, syphilis, and chlamydia, how some people can have these STDs and not even know they have it because they're not displaying any symptoms. And well, the reason for that is because while the virus is inside of the cell, and if we go back here, when the virus is inside of the cell, the host cell, our body doesn't recognize that there's a virus. Usually when something enters the body, our body has a defense system where it starts attacking foreign things. And so when the virus is inside of the cell, that can't happen because the body doesn't recognize it. It's kind of, our cell is almost protecting the virus from being noticed. And that's also why, going back to this slide where you see the nucleic acid a part of the host cell nucleic acid being divided here, is why some people don't get sick, because the virus is just replicating. It's during this lytic cycle here where the cells are being destroyed and the viruses are being released that we start getting sick, because where our cells are bursting or dying and so forth. And so just to go back, kind of slightly touched on this earlier, there's different types of viruses. Viruses that are similar, have RNA viruses, retroviruses. Those are viruses that only have RNA. They can attack animals and plants. Then we have viruses that specifically attack plants. We have viruses that attack bacteria that are called bacteriophages. And then there are animal viruses which attack animals or humans. And that's it.